Chapter 62. Back at her trail home, Sarah dreamed on her couch. Sarah was in a dark stairwell with Rhonda. They were making out, kissing passionately. I know, agreed Rhonda in between hungry kisses. I am a Christian too. I know, Sarah sighing with pleasure in the darkness. I'm sorry, I am not. I just want to follow this path my mother was on. She gave me that lockbox to do what I am doing. Whatever may be the case about Donaldson, the lockbox is a solid intention for my mother. Tell me your secret. Rhonda laughed, holding Sarah's face in her hands. Oh, it's no secret. I've never hidden my beliefs from you. No true Christian could do that, even if she tried. We have the life giving spirit. That guy wants to get out. His jealousy demands his glory. I imagined one day we'd have this conversation. I just never wanted to impose it on you. At last, you freely ask why I believe Jesus is God my Savior of your own accord. I will tell you my conversion tale. Sarah woke up sweating. A conversation with Rhonda planted squarely in her mind. Climbing off the couch in shock at her dream, Sarah hurried into the kitchen. She started water heating to make tea, chai. While the water heated, she rushed to her mother's room, retrieved the lockbox and its silver key. She brought them both into the kitchen. She sat at her kitchen table. Her mind drifted to her mother's lockbox and the silver key that would open it. The water heater whistled. She got up from the table, made her chai tea, then sat back down. The lockbox lay in front of her. Was the lockbox Sarah's false promise in the same way Rhonda's Catholic faith was to her as a child? Hesitating, with her hand trembling, Sarah stuck the silver key into the keyhole of the lockbox and turned the lock until it clicked. The lockbox lid popped loose just a bit. The sense of self-betrayal attacked Sarah's senses. She scratched her head, peering at the lockbox ajar. All the fears she had accumulated about the lockbox contained over the last several weeks loomed before her. Sarah felt she didn't want to live and practice a lie, as Rhonda warned with her story. She needed now only to lift the lid further, and she would see the truth, which frightened her. Open it, she found herself whispering. You unlocked it. Now go all the way. I will tell you my conversion tale. That is what Rhonda had did. Sarah considered perhaps the interior of this box also contained her mother's conversion tale. It would be Jasmine's secret truth exposed. The lockbox lid ajar, the shadow of darkness under its cover, held an attraction for Sarah, a promise that she would refrain from seeking the revelation hidden under the cloak of her mother's bequest, now felt very small, nearly irrelevant, maybe even self-defeating. I've never hidden my beliefs from you. No true Christian could do that, Rhonda had asserted. She had lived a lie. Now it was Sarah's opportunity to shine truth into her life. Jasmine's lockbox had a story to tell, a story Sarah presumed had to do with the newly discovered faith in one Jesus of Nazareth, the daughter of the mother John the Age referred to as my child, had left behind a remnant of a journey Donaldson claimed Sarah needed to follow. John and Prochorus and Aristian, they too believed she needed to follow her mother's path. Sarah's hand went to the minimally ajar lid of the lockbox. She gripped it between her finger like a pincer. Just push it back and take a brief look inside, Sarah told herself. Just a glance, then close it again quickly. Then she would know everything she needed to know about her mother. She would have a true reason to continue along this path or to stop. The truth would return her life to what she once expected it would be after the death of Jasmine. Sarah held on to the unlatched lid to the lockbox until her emotions roared within her like a tempestuous sea of Galilee. Flashes of Jesus reaching down and grabbing a drowning disciple entered her mind. Flashes of lightning, sounds of voices like thunder penetrated her thoughts. Images of her mother alone in the boat being tossed by the waves of the sea in a rainy darkness crashed through Sarah's imagination. Then Sarah flinched in horror as she saw in one instant a red-eyed, chuckling Donaldson. Was it her imagination? Was it a vision? Lockbox, Chapter 63. Saint Irenaeus, writing in 200 AD, had this to say, lectured Father Seraphim to the class of students sitting in rapt attention. He stood behind a wooden podium that was perched on top of a table located in the center of a well of Lecture Hall 101. The lecture hall was located in the psychology building on the CU Boulder campus. A sound mind, one which has not exposed its possessor to danger and is devoted to piety and the love of truth, will eagerly meditate upon those things which God has placed within the power of mankind. In the cavernous lecture hall, a few scattered students occupied its seats. One of those few students raised his hand. Father Seraphim looked up and acknowledged him. The student inquired, what does he mean by a sound mind? One focused on the metaphysical realities, responded Father Seraphim. I am here tonight to give you a small glimpse into a science long discarded in our system. Another student raised his hand. You mean the spooky stuff? He laughed. That's what me and my bros have come to hear. A fun night out. Father Seraphim smiled. Perhaps it does sound spooky to the untrained mind. Saint Irenaeus was speaking about the logical truths. In this sense, he was speaking in metaphysics. Today, one might say it's closer to the notion of philosophy. A student with fuzzy reddish brown and light skin raised his hand. So, a sound mind is devoted to piety and the love of truth? Good question, Wilfred, recognized Father Seraphim. He hesitated, seeing Sarah had just stepped inside the doorway. He smiled, then continuing, look at the question from the perspective of spheres of influence. Humanity has from its creator a sphere of activity, things which it is capable of doing above all other animals. I will paraphrase St. Irenaeus' description of it this way. The Creator has subjected to humanity's knowledge all this terrestrial universe and all the moral knowledge of good and evil. The visible and invisible sinews humans are capable of discerning and being aware of exist in this designated sphere. This is true. whether at the quantum particle level or at a more physically observable level. Looking up at Sarah standing there, whether we can hold it in our hands as a physical thing or discover it in the intangible solidity of the mind, these dreams and visions, these metaphysical thought processes render knowledge of these things easy for a person to obtain by means of daily study and of living experience using the tools of this sphere. Piety is recognizing this is a gift of the divine nature, and love of the truth is not twisting the facts that we find by research of this physical and logical universe to try to conceal the workings of the causal nature. Sarah calling out from the back of the lecture hall, and if we are thinking right about things, what does it look like? Father Seraphim pointing up at Sarah. Ah, one of my favorite disciples. Sarah, you call me a disciple? Wilfred turns and sees Sarah. He takes a deep, excited breath. He means you are learning. Acknowledging Wilfred and glad to see him in the lecture hall, Sarah walked down the descending rows of chairs in the huge lecture hall until she reached Wilfred's row. I'm just trying to discover the truth. Father Seraphim spoke up. Then you are on the right path. I'm still not so sure of that, Father. Sarah sits in one of the chairs just on the opposite side of the descending steps from Wilfred. I discovered something in my waking state, something more relevant to the fate of my mother than I suspected. Wilfred glanced over to Sarah in curiosity. What did you discover? Sarah spoke sympathetically and directly to Wilfred in a tender voice. That I didn't know much at all about what my mother was devoted to and how she lived out her devotion. Father Seraphim again interjected. Ah, you are stuck then in a mystery. Thoughtfully, Sarah turned to Father Seraphim, calling down from her seat. Yes, a mystery. St. Irenaeus said, the very system of creation to which we belong testifies, by what falls under our notice, that one being made and governs it. Did something fall to your notice, Sarah? Something did, and it is still a mystery to you. It is. Truth itself is the rule by which you will accept this mystery. This is the science of metaphysics. When we exercise ourselves in the investigation of the mysteries and the administrations of the living Creator, we will discover more and more beyond touch and sight and hearing. We discover things spiritual. The deeper we recognize the intangible existence of spiritual reality, the more mysterious the terrestrial reality seems. Death itself begins to hold new meanings. What one might think is static about death actually becomes something filled with newly discovered wonders. But at the same time, the terrestrial's existence becomes more menacing in its reality. When once you thought it was the only real life, you come to see it is only one kind of real life, Sarah responded. That's that is why, if my understanding of quantum entanglement is correct, death of oneself in the multiverse may not really be death of oneself. Whoa, a student shouts. This stuff is mind bending. IRL, man. The other day I had a dream and I could have sworn it was really happening. Was it? Responded Seraphim with a raised eyebrow. How the hell should I know? Laughed the student. It certainly felt real. Our time is just about up tonight. Father Seraphim wrote a word on the projector. and it appeared in big bold letters on the screen for all the students to see. Wisdom, Father Seraphim continued. What we know by experimentation is one form of knowledge, and what we know by intuition is another form of knowledge, and what we know by logic is another form of knowledge still. Yet they are all knowledge. It is wisdom to recognize this. When we combine them all together, we have the right foundation for metaphysical science, noble human knowledge. Remember, you may hear a thing, see a thing, discover the results of a thing, but its essence, its work inside you, may still be a mystery until what, Father? One of the scattered female students in the lecture hall shouts. Until you are converted, he smiles, shuts off the projector. This is it for today. See you next week. The class started to empty out. As the students are filing out, Wilfred approached Sarah. He saw him coming and began to feel nervous. She had not expected to run into Wilfred at Father Seraphim's lecture. She had no plan for him. Sarah felt exposed and unready. She smiled at him awkwardly, remaining speechless as he drew near, standing over her. It had been days since they shared that lucid dream together, the one on the boisterous Sea of Galilee. There she saw her mother. Neither Sarah nor Wilfred had called or texted the other since, and it was beyond the 3 day limit. When you are dating, you don't allow the other to not hear from you for 3 days. That's what Rhonda told Sarah, insisting Sarah at least text Wilfred and thank him for the assistance. Sarah couldn't bring herself to do it, but now that she knew the truth, which had eluded her before, she felt a small regret not communicating with Wilfred the state of her reflections. I'm surprised to see you here, started Wilfred in a friendly way. It's been a while. Sarah nodded tightly. She felt constrained, as if tied in a straitjacket. I'm sorry, Father Seraphim called out from the bottom of the well. Time to go, you two. It's lights out here. Yes, Father Seraphim, said Wilfred. Ready? He zipped up his blue coat with its furry hoodie. Sarah slowly stood up. She pulled her white winter cap with embroidered snowflakes over her head. Her long brown coat she buttoned up. It fell down the length of her short body. She pulled on her white mittens. Ready? Together they walked out of the lecture hall and down the hall to exit the front door. Wilfred pulled his blue coat's hood with its furry edge over his head as they stepped into the falling snow outside. The university landscape had succumbed to the rain of the night. The thick clouds above obscured the moon. The snow-covered ground crunched under their booted feet as they made their way cautiously to the nearby parking lot. They didn't speak. Wilfred saw they were drawing near his brown Toyota. He turned to Sarah. McDonald's is open now on 28th. I'm hungry for some fries. Sarah resisted responding at first. She had a lot on her mind, so many raw ideas she wanted to keep to herself. Why does it have to be this way? She thought to herself. Love, hope, faith, truth, time, the existence of God, all the greatest, most desired things to know are shrouded in mystery. They are all made easy to ignore, you know. What was that? Wilfred was confused by Sarah's untethered statement. I just want to get some fries. The easiest thing to not see is truth, yet it is the most important thing to perceive. Wilfred stopped by his car in the parking lot. So McDonald's? He remained on an entirely different wavelength from Sarah. Sarah sighed. She wanted to be with Wilfred. She did. Well, I can't, Wilfred. Not tonight. I'm so confused right now. I've learned so much lately. I need to unknot. I don't think fries will help. The lucid dream upset you. Seeing your mother upset you. Maybe Donaldson was right, and I shouldn't. Quickly touching Wilfred on the arm. No, don't say that. Don't. She looked at him compassionately. It's just, I'm so thankful you shared the lucid dream with me. This is just something I'm going through right now. It's a self inflicted preoccupation. I don't want to be distracted. The snow fell on them in the night as they lingered by Wilfred's car. The lamps scattered around the campus had eerie glows and gave off fairly effective illumination in the harshly falling snow. Sarah pushed up on her tiptoe, quickly kissed Wilfred on the cheek. The move surprised Wilfred. He touched the side of his face with his cold hand. Okay, he said. I get it. He paused, opened his car door. Where is your Volvo parked? I will drive you to it. No, that's okay. I want to walk, to think. Hearing Father Seraphim tonight gave me a lot to ponder. Wilfred sighed. Okay, it's damn cold out here. There's going to be a lot of accumulation. You sure you want to delay driving home? My ride is very dependable in the snow. I just got new snow tires. Remember? I get paid 65K. Lucky you. Well, I'm out then. He sat in his car and closed the driver's side door. Sarah watched the car roar to life. The windshield wipers went into operation, cleaning off the still wet, fluffy snow. She watched as Wilfred slowly backed out, straightened the car, then drove toward the parking lot exit. Soon he turned right onto Colorado Boulevard, the road that cuts through the middle of the CU Boulder campus. Sarah watched Wilfred's brown Toyota pass the traffic light and turn left on 28th Street. Warm, hot fries certainly sounded tempting, she whispered to herself. Lockbox, Chapter 64. Sarah indeed did not immediately go home after watching Wilfred's car disappear into the snowy night. She did what she knew Rhonda would consider insane to do on the night of a snowstorm. She decided to drive the route to Golden on Highway 93. She needed to be alone. She felt the drive toward the funeral home where Jasmine had been cremated would be a remedy for what ailed her. A dangerous drive, she thought, might break her free from what tethered her. Sarah drove into the snowy fury as the harsh wind battered her Volvo. The windshield wipers of her vehicle clacked a regular beat across the glass as the snow continually covered it in swirling blankets of white. The snow removal trucks fought gallantly, but it was a losing battle. As Sarah drove closer to the midpoint between Boulder and Golden, she saw only the random truck plowing the snow in the futile attempt to keep Highway 93 open. The wipers beat against her windshield with an unnerving rhythm. The white torrent immediately clouded Sarah's view after each pass of the wipers. Her vehicle's speed reduced as the road grew more intractable. When Sarah arrived at the point where she remembered spilling her guts out in nauseous pain, her Volvo reached a long incline. The Volvo struggled to grind its way to the top. Her front wheel drive, usually reliable, began slipping, whirling ineffectively on the snow packed road. Sarah looked on as a few drivers who dared to be caught in the snowstorm with her futilely battled Mother Nature's white fury. Their cars failed to reach the top of the incline, either sliding back down the hill or spinning off to the side and coming to an inglorious halt. Sarah's mighty Volvo kept chugging, however. The others, who had lost their struggle, looked like dark wraiths to Sarah as she slowly passed them. Those vehicles were rapidly being covered over by a blanket of white, stalled to the side of the road, hazard lights blinking in the night. For Sarah, this drive came in response to a command deep inside her body against all her fears. What she discovered in the prior recent hours compelled her as previous revelations barely done before. Whatever she had believed about Donaldson in the past, this new information had stung her deeply. Rhonda's conversation, Rhonda's conversion story added to her agitation. What Sarah found herself feeling now was a deep grievance, where before Donaldson's challenge and her mother's lockbox had proved a profitable challenge that she reluctantly engaged in. The discoveries she had made from the lucid dreams, and so much more, tore at her trust in Donaldson. Lucid dreams and unanticipated visions ripped too many holes in her once happy go lucky existence. How would converting to Christianity like Rhonda close all those holes, heal the huge gaping wound now exposed in her memories of her mother? She was coming to believe that Donaldson's motive was nefarious. His insistence seemed calculated to obliterate all those memories of it being just Sarah and Jasmine, mother and daughter against the world. For Sarah, the question refused avoidance. Can the lockbox be her mother's warning about Donaldson? She cried and wiped at her tears from her haunted face in the dark interior of her struggling Volvo, going uphill on a blanket of snow. Sarah pondered these destabilizing questions to which she realized if her sanity were to survive, she needed answers. She needed to know why. Her mother had secretly converted to a faith out of the inexplicable nothingness which had given their lives so much joy. Father Seraphim had referred to all this as a mystery. A mystery of what? What connection might the contents of the lockbox have to Jasmine's conversion and death almost immediately afterward? Sarah felt the answers to these questions tantalized her on the tip of her awareness. Lucid dreams had brought her so close and yet so far away. Her mind flashed back to Father Seraphim in the lecture hall. She could hear him in her mind's eye, Father Seraphim writing a word on the projector, and it appearing in big, bold letters on the screen for all students to see. Wisdom. What we know by experimentation is one form of knowledge, and what we know by intuition is another form of knowledge, and what we know by logic is another form of knowledge still. Yet they are all knowledge. It is wisdom to recognize this. When we combine them all together, we have the right foundation for metaphysical science, knowable human knowledge. Remember, you may hear a thing, see a thing, discover the results of a thing, but its essence, its work inside you may still be a mystery until the memory repeated itself. Remember, you may hear a thing, see a thing, discover the results of a thing, but its essence, its work inside you may still be a mystery until what, Father? One of the female students shouts. Until you are converted, Father Seraphim responded. Sarah wiped at her tears in the car as if trying to wipe away the memory. She screamed into the night. Why the hell don't you tell me? She screamed. Mother, why didn't you tell me? She glanced over at the lockbox on the passenger side seat. Its white and purple exterior sat silent, unmoved, closed to her screams. She pounded on her steering wheel and screamed her pain in the unheard loneliness of her car's interior. She barely noticed the car skidding as her Volvo at last breached a hill in the unyielding snowfall, blanketing the earth in grasping glee. The Volvo briefly broke free of the snow's grasp and tipped over the summit of the incline into the dark, and the incline became a descent. The car picked up speed on the downhill tilt. She shifted the gear down to low, but it was too late. The sped up car skidded downward until hardened thin snow, from which the snowplows last went over this part of the road, betrayed Sarah. The car zoomed into a fishtail and slid sideways down the hill. Sarah fought to bring the car back around in its slide. She hit the brakes, but they locked on her. The Volvo fishtailed in the opposite direction. The snow pouring from the heavens continued to obscure her windshield. The car spun a 380, and Sarah drove it off the road into the ground across the field. The wheels struggled, spun, and the car jolted forward out of control. The darkness and the whiteout made visibility impossible. Sarah jolted forward as the car crashed into a hidden boulder. The impact threw her head forward. The Volvo's airbags blew open, knocking her back. Everything went black. Lockbox. Chapter 65. The snow fell on the green Volvo as it purred in the darkness. Briefly, its alarms went off, and its lights blinked as if in warning. Then the night swallowed the Volvo, and the snow covered it, way off the road, sinking in the silence. Then Sarah dreamed. She saw in front of her a giant door in the night sky, and it cracked open. As the snow fell around it, beyond the open door a slither of white light streamed through. Sarah's spirit left her body. It floated in front of her physical form. Sarah looked down on the motionless body. Her head was tilted back, resting on the seat's top cushion. She wondered at this sight. Then, as if by some force, she felt herself pulling away from the body. She seemed to be moving through the shattered car door window, up through the snowstorm. She could see the car below her as she progressed upward. The wind howled in her face. Looking over her shoulder into the night, she again saw the aperture in the sky as an open door. The light proved so blinding that it felt warm, like the rays of the sun. When the blinding light cleared, Sarah saw she stood amid a crowd. She instantly could feel her connection to the Volvo car seat. "I'm dreaming a lucid dream," she whispered to herself. She felt something dripping from the side of her face. Her hand went there, and when she brought it back, she could see a trickle of blood. The crash bag, she remembered. She received a gash from the impact. Sarah understood now. Her imagination had carried her back to Roman times. She knew it instantly, observing the dress of the people around her. She mumbled, "The land of Israel." It was curious to her because she didn't see Aristian, Prochorus, or John the Aged. Usually they would appear. This time she stood alone. She looked around and surmised she was located south of the walls of Jerusalem. Sarah could see the glittering golden roof of the temple in the distance. Around her, small hills green with grass, and on her field of vision, white stone slabs that went around a clear pool of water. These white slabs also doubled as stone steps descending to the pool. There was a man there, kneeling at the feet of who Sarah instantly recognized as Jesus. His red tunic and blue sash diagonally draped around his shoulder and across his chest set him apart as Sarah's iconographic simulation of the real person. His disciples stood behind him, and in front of him a crowd of men finely dressed in black. These Pharisees by now became a mainstay. One of these Pharisees was shouting at Jesus, Are you saying we are blind? Sarah heard Jesus respond. If you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you say, we see. Therefore, your sin remains. Father Seraphim had explained to Sarah the arcane nature of the word sin. Modern translations fail to capture the essence of its full meaning. Mixed into the term such ideas as disobedience, lack of faith, missing the mark, or doing wrong all congregated. The more Sarah comprehended this difference, the better she would understand the despairing force of the mere knowledge of good and evil. With this clarification, Sarah watched Jesus' actions as he started walking toward Sarah. She panicked, moving to the side. Jesus stopped, gazed in her direction as if he saw her move. Sarah cringed, feeling called out for her nervousness by Jesus' seemingly penetrating glance. According to John the Aged, those in the lucid dream could not discern her. She waited anxiously, thinking Jesus might say something to her. He seemed to cryptically smile at her before turning to face the Pharisees now surrounding him and his disciples. Jesus launched into a metaphor. He who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. Sarah saw him turn and look in her direction again. Her flesh tingled as if all her nerves were reacting. She looked into his dark eyes and saw herself reflected in them. The words he had just spoken penetrated through her apprehension. The door. Was he referring to the door she had just passed through in her imagination to arrive here? She could still feel her body on the car seat, reassuring she was still anchored to her waking life. She wanted to say something to Jesus. Her mouth moved, but nothing came out. She uttered under her throat, Jesus. A soft breeze which brushed her long black hair whisked her voice away. Jesus went on speaking as if he hadn't heard her. What he said in another metaphor struck at Sarah's reality, at the hinge on which her dream hung. I am the door of the sheep. All who ever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved, and will go in and out and find pasture. A Pharisee challenged him. Who do you make yourself out to be? The door. What does that mean? Sarah flinched as Jesus circled her. Did he see me? She thought. He knows I'm here. I am convinced of it. She wanted to shrink from the exposing perception of his knowing eyes, the imagined attention Sarah believed Jesus gave her made the daughter of Jasmine watchful of his every move. What Sarah sensed involved a sharp replay intuition of when she floated on the stone slabs in the dark void. Jesus, in that vision, she learned, held the title the Son of Man, and she remembered Jesus floating toward the great and mighty cloud on which sat the white throne. The thief does not come except to steal, Jesus' voice drew her back to him, and to kill and to destroy. And I have come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. Only the Torah can give life from its reading and obedience to it. You blaspheme, an agitated voice from the crowd of Pharisees shouted. Sarah could tell the Pharisees were not listening to Jesus at all. They just parried his every statement. Shepherd, door, sheep, life abundantly, all metaphors of substantiality. Sarah began to feel deep inside the door metaphor, lie or victory. It was an irrational belief. Nevertheless, she had passed through a door of light to arrive here again, and in the land of Jesus' temporal manifestation. What else could it mean for Sarah except this life of which Jesus spoke had to be connected to the life-giving Spirit? She had heard it enough to recognize its offer. You shall die by death. There again, that lingering warning of the lost life in the garden paradise. Life for life, exchanged by death for death. Jesus' metaphor harkened back to the path that led to mortality, promising an entry back into the golden halo, itself a visible representation. The problem and the solution were being explicated. The imagery provided by Jesus collapsed Sarah's defenses in a new way, making her want to hear Jesus speak more. She hungrily yearned to hear more about life. I am the good shepherd, Jesus said. The good shepherd gives his life for the sheep. What do you mean, the good shepherd gives his life? Demanded one of the scribes, dressed in white robes and headdress. Are you slandering us because you are a wicked lawbreaker? You broke the Sabbath by healing that man. There are 6 days in which to work, but you choose to dishonor the Sabbath. You are totally missing the point, Sarah shouted reflexively. Her hand went to her mouth as if covering the shame of her outburst. As she should have expected, no one heard her. Her uncontrolled outburst affected merely her own self discovery. She desperately wanted to see Aristian, Prochorus, John the Aged. If they had appeared, she would not be alone in her own understanding. She would be able to ask the questions which perplexed her by her presence at this event. Then, suddenly, Jesus came and laid his hand on Sarah's shoulder. Sarah rose, shocked. He was touching her. By this physical act, Jesus penetrated Sarah's supposed anonymity. He showed her his omniscience. He and he alone smiled at her with his lips. He and he alone touched her with his broad hands, and no one else in the area gave her any notice. Sarah took a deep, frightened breath. She felt like a thief stealing a precious jewel by her spectral presence. The ghost of Lafayette, Colorado, had called out from behind a phantasmal shield into the light of Jesus' personal revelation. She felt like a hypnotist had performed a private seance against her will, tearing away all her egotistical facades. Then Jesus said, almost as if on cue, to calm her sense that she had done wrong to intrude upon his existence in the authentic land of Jerusalem. I am the good shepherd, and I know my sheep, and I am known by my own. As the Father knows me, even so I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. When Jesus finished, he moved away from Sarah. He stepped back to his disciples. Sarah recognized the young John among them. A sense of comfort washed over her as Jesus continued. And other sheep I have which are not of this fold. Them also I must bring, and they will hear my voice, and there will be one flock and one shepherd. We are the children of Israel, shouted the priests around Jesus. You have followers who are not of the Jews. You are the door for them. You are life for them. This is an outrage. My Father loves me, shouted back Jesus, because I lay down my life that I may take it again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of myself. I have the power to lay it down, and I have the power to take it again. The Pharisees raged. You have a demon. You are mad. Why does anyone listen to you? Some of them started picking up rocks. Fear leaped in Sarah's throat. As the crowd of Pharisees became more agitated, Sarah stepped back protectively a few paces, fearing what was to come. Someone among them shouted, How long do you keep us in doubt? If you are the Christ, tell us plainly. I told you, Jesus asserted, and you do not believe. The works that I do in my Father's name bear witness of me, but you do not believe because you are not of my sheep. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me, and I give them eternal life, and they shall never perish, neither shall anyone snatch them out of my hand. In fury, the Pharisees' crowd grew more boisterous. They started gathering rocks and stones. Their demeanor became rigid with intent as their hands prepared to hurl the rocks at Jesus until he was dead. The desire for murder ignited the whites of their eyes in a relentless madness. Sarah backed up even more until she stood behind the disciples in the clear. She made no attempt to flee. The confrontation had solidified what she understood. The door image in the night snow, the door of Jesus, the life and life more abundantly. Then she felt a hand, not here, but back in her waking life. She felt two hands pulling on her. Slowly, as if being painted in front of her, Wilfred appeared. In the crowd, she saw her mother being painted into view too. Jasmine's dove-white face, her dark hair, almond eyes, small lips, a petite frame, the very image of Jasmine. Her mother saw Sarah too and smiled. The sight clawed at Sarah's emotions. She wanted to run to her mother and hug her tightly, but the crowd shoved her back, and Jasmine's apparition was swallowed up by the agitated crowd. Then Sarah saw, to her great surprise, Donaldson appeared. He went after Jasmine, fading into the crowd. "What the hell?" shouted Sarah. She turned and saw Jesus was calling out above the crowd. "My Father who has given them to me is greater than all, and no one is able to snatch them out of my Father's hand. I and my Father are one." The stones began flying to target Jesus. The crowd panicked and degenerated into a stampede of humans running for their lives. Sarah was jerked back into her waking life. "Come on," the male voice said. "I've got you. Come on." Sarah returned to her waking life, strapped in her car seat. The car was being pulled upward by a tow truck jack. Two paramedics frantically released Sarah from her seatbelt and pulled her out of the car. They laid her on their gurney, groggy and dazed, with blood dripping down her forehead. Sarah could barely mumble her plea. "My box! My lockbox!" A male paramedic grabbed it out of the passenger seat of the car and laid it by Sarah's side as they wheeled her up the embankment back to the road where her Volvo had skidded into the field. As they loaded her into the back of the ambulance, she tried to see if Wilfred stood nearby. He was nowhere to be seen. When they finished securing her in the back of the ambulance, two of them climbed inside, and the third shut the back door. "I am the door," Sarah remembered Jesus saying. Then she fell into a dreamless unconsciousness. Lockbox, Chapter 66. Rhonda sat by Sarah's hospital's bedside, stroking the hair of her unconscious friend, gripping her motionless hand that lay by her side. Rhonda spoke to Sarah in low, compassionate tones. "I am so sorry if my conversion story drove you to take that torturous drive to Golden during a blizzard. You crazy friend." Rhonda stroked Sarah's still arm. "I knew many conversion stories of the great men and women of the Christian faith. I should have told you one of those, not made it so personally close to you." She looked down on her friend, motionless, the sound of the medical machinery drowning out Sarah's thin breathing. Nevertheless, the wonders of modern medicine displayed the signs of life: heart monitor beeping, oxygen machine pumping, and saline dripping. C.S. Lewis, the great 20th century Christian polemicist, had described himself as the most reluctant convert in all England. That would have perhaps been a less dangerous conversion story to tell you. Rhonda sighed. "I brought this book with me. We've been much into books lately, with your research and all, for Donaldson." Rhonda thumbed through the pages of the book she caressed delicately in her hands. "Think of how wild it's been. You and I, turning into historians and scholars, delving into the mysteries of metaphysics, breathing in deeply, looking up again at her silent friend. This book explores the conversions of several famous Christians. Jasmine let me borrow it. I didn't want to tell you about the book. She made me promise. Rhonda turned to a page. If you can hear me, I'll read you this short passage. It's from C.S. Lewis. You probably have no clue who he is, but I think there is no Christian from the 20th century more famous and more known than Lewis to the average layman. She began reading. It came at the end of a tumultuous journey of spiritual and intellectual exploration. Rhonda paused and laughed. I loved Lewis's Narnia stories, she said. It is a series of novels eventually turned into movies, the most famous of which, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Rhonda hesitated. I'm sure you've seen it. Every child has. Feeling somewhat awkward. Anyway, he began reading again. I went from atheism to theism, and from theism to believe in Jesus Christ. Before that, I was, at that time, living in a world of illusions like many atheists. I maintained that God did not exist. But as I progressed in my studies, I began to find in reading poetry, of which I hope to be one of those, I began to discover the more religious a poet, the more fed I felt. The Christian poetry of Spencer, of Milton, I loved to read them, but I read them with the point left out, trying desperately to ignore the point. I thought I'd like the college atheists, but I found I really like fellows like J.R.R. Tolkien. Rhonda paused and laughed. She stroked Sarah's cheek. Tolkien was a practicing Catholic. You know his stories. Lord of the Rings, my precious. Rhonda turned her attention back to Lewis's conversion story. My friend Barfield hammered upon me the idea that imagination plays a very important part in how we know. He rejected the model that science was the only way to truth. The imagination lays behind even the work of science. Barfield showed me that imagination was the foundation, and to not look to imagination, I would be missing out on what made knowledge possible. I read Euripides, Hippolytus, and I was off to the land of longing. It felt like joy, a desire that is more desirable than any satisfaction. A desire is turned toward its object. I realized that intimate desires do not exist unless they correspond to something that can satisfy them. If there is a desire for something beyond this world, there must be something that lies beyond this world. The fox had now been dislodged from the wood and was running in the open, bedraggled and weary. The odd thing is, before God closed in on me, it appeared I was offered a moment of wholly free choice. I was riding a bus up a hill, without words and almost without images. A fact about myself was somehow presented to me. I felt myself being given a free choice. I could open the door or keep it shut. I chose to open. I felt as if I were a man of snow, at long last beginning to melt. I had wanted, a mad wish, to call my soul my own. You must picture me alone in the college, night after night, feeling for a second, if I lift my head from my work, the steady, unrelenting approach of him whom I so earnestly desired not to meet. Total surrender, the absolute leap into the dark was demanded. I gave in and admitted that God was God. A female doctor entered the room. You've been here quite a while. Rhonda looked up. Yes, I know. I should get going. She turned a tender gaze back to Sara. I think I've given you quite enough to think about. The doctor smiled. We temporarily induced a coma. She had a concussion, which caused some bleeding on the brain. No cause to be concerned. We are confident she will recover just fine. Rhonda stood up. She looked at Sara's lockbox perched on the table at Sara's bedside, the white and purple artifact of dreams, as Rhonda thought Sara believed it to be. It sat there on the nearby table, silent and unmoved. She walked over to the lockbox. Should I open it? She thought. Did Sara finally open it herself? What lies inside? What horror or hope did Jasmine leave to her daughter? She laid her book of conversion stories down next to it. A gift for my friend if she wakes and I'm not here. The doctor acknowledged it with a nod. I will make sure everything is there for her. Don't worry. Sara couldn't believe she could hear Rhonda reading to her the story of C.S. Lewis's conversion. She could hear Rhonda. The power to respond, however, had been taken from her. She was frozen, her body locked in some kind of immovable vice. It felt like a dream. She knew she was dreaming, but this dream paralyzed her, or kept her motionless as if her body had become a prison to her and left her awareness unmolested. When she knew Rhonda had departed and the paralysis became frightful, she took great gasps of air to try to energize her strength and force herself out of the dream paralysis. The force holding her in place would not dissipate. Panic set in. Wildly, she thought, I'm trapped. I'm trapped in my own body. Then Sara seemed to see a glimmer of light. The pinprick of illumination stopped her panic as she gazed in its direction. The distant brilliance entranced Sara in a soothing way, and she began to relax her muscles to focus on the invitation that seemed to emanate from that small light. Sara imagined herself inhaling deeply. She recalled Wilfred's mantra, which he had used when he lucid dreamed with her. Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior. Instinctively imagining herself able to speak in spite of her physical paralysis, she repeated Wilfred's mnemonic, Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior. After saying the mnemonic, Sara inhaled a long and careful breath, filling her lungs. Then she exhaled, long and steady. She felt some sense of control now. In her physical body, she may be trapped, but in her imagination, Sara sensed she possessed free will still. She repeated the mantra, Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior. The light around her grew larger and larger until she could see a room. I am in a room, she said in her thoughts. She could only see, however, the ceiling portion of the room. She needed to reorient. Here, let me help you, called a female voice. Sara felt as if her whole body was being adjusted and moved, not of her own will. Rather, Sara surmised the person with the feminine voice was the one adjusting her physical position. Soon the entire yellow-walled room came into view. The room had nothing in it, not a stick of furniture, not a clock to tell the time, not a table, not a chair, nothing. A certain definable sensation took hold of Sara, the feeling of sitting on a hard floor. However, the sensation of hardness contradicted itself. The floor felt as if it might also be firm like a cushion or mushy like foam. One part of her brain told her she should be lying on a bed. and the other part of her brain was certain she sat on the floor. The floor seemed to tilt, lifting the upper half of her body so she could see the room. A single window implied there would be an outside to this room. However, what poured through the seeming glass of the window resembled neither day nor night. Rather, the brightness spilling through this apparent window from the outside hinted of personality, as if were Sarah to step outside that window, she would meet a brilliant presence, inexplicably the source of self illumination, giving off light like a burning sun. In addition to this sensation, Sarah believed within this uncreated light she could hear the faint sound of people's voices mingling beyond it. "You are stuck, aren't you?" The female voice sounded again. It sounded familiar to Sarah. She heard this voice before. "Yes, you know my voice, daughter." Slowly, an image materialized, connecting the sound waves of articulation to a woman Sarah recognized. Jasmine. Sarah's mother appeared standing by the window, her form bathed in the stream of brilliance which poured through the long window. Elation, wonder, and fear filled Sarah. Was this truly Jasmine or a figment of Sarah's imagination? Dream, vision, waking life? Sarah stared at the apparition, speechless. She tried to form words, but no words came out of her mouth. The inability to speak agitated her. Her brain told Sarah her mother was standing right there, looking like Sarah had always experienced her in earthly life. Jasmine dressed in her flowery work apron, the garden work gloves, her shiny jet black hair tied in a ponytail, her dark pupils and almond-shaped eyes, a white skin which never sunburned despite long days in the trailer garden. This Jasmine, or ghost of Jasmine, or the configuration of the imagination, walked toward where Sarah imagined a feeling of herself sitting up. You can't move forward. You can't go backwards. You are paralyzed. Your immobility is your own choice, you know. Jasmine was speaking in a caring but stern voice. Sarah wanted so much to respond. Something held her back. This force reduced Sarah to seeing only, hearing only, in the imagination of the mind only. She was allowed to perceive. What did this mean? She asked herself. How did her mother appear to her? This was now the third time Sarah sensed the presence of Jasmine, and yet each time without any allowance to communicate. You can't move because it's not your lucid dream, it's mine. This is not an easy skill to master, to bridge to another's lucid dream. Sarah's eyes blinked. She struggled to grasp what her mother was saying. Didn't Rhonda just read to you that the imagination is the foundation of knowledge? Yet you continue to refuse to believe. You disbelieve yourself, despite all the things you've experienced. Ephesus, John the Aged, Aristian, Procrus, the garden paradise, Eve, tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the visible representation of the life-giving spirit, the Son of Man coming to Ancient of Days in the clouds to receive the kingdom. Each time, your dreams are built on the imagination of your spirit, yet you refuse to believe. You will believe what your physical eyes show you, what your physical ear hears for you, what your hands touch for you, and the ground under which your feet walk. This you will believe. Touch, taste, sound, sight. However, when it concerns the configured imagination of your own mind, the longing of your own soul, this you continue to refuse to believe. The apparition or conjured imagination of Jasmine continued. I admit, I didn't believe at first. Like C.S. Lewis, I too didn't want to believe. Then I started to ask myself, why? And you are there too, aren't you? Don't, don't struggle. I know. I saw you on the water with the Savior. I saw you near the pool of Siloam. The King of the universe touched you, and your response was to run. Hop in your car and make a dangerous drive to a place of my cremation in a blinding snowstorm. Where did you think you would end up by such a foolish act? Sarah at times watched her mother staring down at her, at times moving about the room, a presence like a giant rebuke and a cherished desire. This haunt felt cruel. Sarah couldn't talk, couldn't move, couldn't interact with her mother. Her eyes filled with tears. Oh dear, said Jasmine tenderly. She dabbed a handkerchief in Sarah's eyes, drying the wet tracks on Sarah's face. Was the handkerchief real? Sarah asked herself in silence. Crying isn't the solution, Jasmine said softly. You must choose to believe. I gave you the lockbox. Did you open it yet? I can't imagine you would be having all this turmoil if you had opened it. It would seem to me everything would be very clear. No? Sarah would have shaken her head to negate Jasmine's assertion. How could what the lockbox contained possibly make things clearer? Tell me about Donaldson, her mind shouted. Tell me why you stopped resisting and came to believe. Such unvoiced questions and demands, of course, only lived in her thoughts. Sarah existed in the tomb of her body. You wanted to see me, Jasmine was saying. Now I've given you what you wanted. You will merely see, you find merely seeing me through the imagination is just a foundation to knowledge. You will find merely seeing me through the imagination is just a foundation to knowledge. You must make use of all that lucid dreaming gives you. They are seeds to the truth, to reality, as Father Seraphim has taught you, just as he helped me. Truth and logic. Look deep inside yourself to the truth and the logic. Metaphysics is the way. Use your imagination to reach the right conclusion. The inner self is more real than the physical self. But you will only discover this authentic being if you choose to believe you really are it. You are you, spirit, soul, body, each perceived not of the flesh, but of the imagination. Sarah felt Jasmine gently touch her on the side of her face with the palm of the hand. Sarah could see that small, delicate hand clearly. Her mother's compassionately gazing dark eyes filled Sarah's vision. Reluctance filled Jasmine's voice. My time is up. I have to go now. Please don't go, Sarah moaned inside. Don't go. I know, Jasmine said. You want me to stay. I want to stay. This is his construct. It's his allowance. I don't have the power. You know him. You've heard from him. Remember what he said. My sheep hear my voice, and they follow me, and I give them eternal life. I lay down my life for the sheep. Jasmine was gently stroking Sarah's face as the dream faded away. This is why I gifted you my lockbox. The soul of the daughter is mine, says the Lord, and the soul of the mother is mine. The righteousness of the mother will be for her, and the righteousness of the daughter will be for her own. The disbelief of the mother will be her own, and the disbelief of the daughter will be her own. The faith of the mother remains with her, and the faith of the daughter stays with her. To each her own, life or death, the knowledge of good and evil, or the life-giving spirit